Left them in at that point, we're actually crossing over here on the far left side, make it cross to the
Provide basic service.
Hey, Mickey, I'm back.
Y'all ready? Yes, sir. I'm ready, sir. All right, ready.
Second Amendment. Second Amendment.
Fire in the hole.
All right.
Not much fire.
Yeah, sort of a mixture.
Looks good.
Is that authentic?
We've done a couple more guys over here. Just a less stinky. Yeah, here, man. You gotta have a bad last Kenny, right here, Kenny. Come on, right here, right over here, right there.
Hey.
Come on, Kenny. Stand up.
Good tape on this side.
Everyone has to fix it.
The Indians are dirty.
I guess so.
Give me two ladies on each side.
Who do we do?
Is that how your high school days went?
Shore of Lake Okeechobee. Several years earlier, as part of an effort to remove all Native Americans from the eastern United States, the government forced the Seminole nation into signing a treaty that called for the Indians to emigrate to a reservation in what is now Oklahoma. The Seminoles dispute this treaty and have taken up arms in defense of their homeland. For 2 long and bloody years, the Second Seminole War has been raging through the Florida Territory. The war has not gone well for the United States Army. The conflict began on December 28, 1835, when Seminole forces annihilated a column of 108 soldiers midway between Tampa and Ocala. 3 days later, the Seminole turned back an army of 750 men at the Withlacoochee River. 6 weeks after that, they stopped a force of 1,000 men and held them under siege for over a week. A month later, they thoroughly eluded an army of 5,000 soldiers led by the nation's most distinguished general. Who were these people, and how were they able to so easily embarrass the mighty United States Army? The Seminole Nation was an amalgam of several tribes, numbering little more than 5,000 people. They could raise no more than 1,500 warriors, but rarely brought more than a few hundred together at any one time. Cunning, skill, and fierce determination, and an intimate knowledge of the land were their most formidable weapons. After nearly a year of disappointment, a frustrated President Andrew Jackson dispatched Major General Thomas Jessup to Florida. Unlike his predecessors, Jessup knew this was not going to be a short war. To defeat the Seminoles, he built numerous forts, kept them well supplied, and sent out small mobile detachments to constantly harass the Seminole and destroy their villages. At first, the strategy seemed to be working, and some Seminole leaders sued for peace. The peace fell apart in the summer of 1837, and an embittered Jessup began the practice of taking Seminole leaders prisoner while negotiating under a flag of truce. In December of 1837, Jessup began a massive campaign that he hoped would finally bring a close to the Florida War. 9,000 men were brought in from across the nation. The force would be divided into 7 columns that would scour the peninsula from north to south, forcing the Seminole to either surrender, flee into the inhospitable Everglades, or stand and fight. The largest of Jessup's columns was led by career Army officer Colonel Zachary Taylor. Taylor had left Tampa with over 1,000 men and marched east until he reached the Kissimmee River, then turned south following the course of the river. It was unexplored territory. The map he carried didn't even show Lake Okeechobee. He built forts along the way, leaving them well garrisoned and with orders to search out and capture any Seminole found in the area. By the time he reached this place, he was down to 800 men. As the army approached the lake, they were confronted by an old Indian who pointed toward a large wooded area and told them this was where the Seminoles would make their stand. The Indian force of over 300 warriors was led by 2 of their greatest leaders. Abiaka, also known as Sam Jones, was a wise old medicine man who knew when to stand and fight and when to go into hiding. Okeechobee, known as Wildcat, was a fierce young chief who had recently escaped from the fortress at St. Augustine after being taken prisoner while carrying a flag of truce. Together, they planned a remarkable defense. Imagine a lake with no dike around it. Along the north shore is a densely wooded hammock, the moist ground covered with fallen trees, shadowed by twisted branches, covered with moss. In front of the hammock is a water-filled sawgrass swamp. It is the perfect natural fortress. To reach the Seminole defenders, the soldiers will have to cross that swamp, the water and the mud slowing their progress, the blades of the sawgrass tearing into their clothing and their skin. The white cross belts on their uniforms make ideal targets. Zachary Taylor gathers his troops and issues his orders. Taylor's plan is simple and straightforward. He will attack the hammock in 3 waves. First will be a force of more than 100 Missouri volunteers, led by Colonel Richard Gentry. These are not professional soldiers, but civilians who have answered their nation's call, dressed in their own clothing, carrying their own weapons. Behind them is an equal force of the 6th United States Infantry under Colonel Ramsey Thompson. To the east stand more than 100 men of the 4th Infantry, led by Colonel William S. Foster. Held in reserve is nearly half of Taylor's force, several hundred men of the 1st Infantry. What you see before you is the center of the battlefield. Orders from Colonel Taylor. On orders from Colonel Taylor, the Missouri Volunteers advance. The Seminole know how the Army fights. The soldiers march in ranks, their officers leading the way. From their concealment within the hammock, the Seminole warriors target the officers, killing or wounding most all of them. One of the first to fall is Colonel Gentry of the Missouri Volunteers.
Flamethrowers? No, and they're mortars. They're mortars. Yeah. This is not pretty bad. Yeah, they actually have to be. They want. Yeah, mortar.
Without leaders and suffering heavy casualties, the volunteers halt their march. From behind the volunteers, Colonel Thompson leads the 6th Infantry forward, forms them into ranks, and fires carefully aimed volleys into the hammock. Disciplined soldiers, the infantrymen stand their ground, taking deadly fire from the hammocks. Before long, Colonel Thompson and most of his officers are either dead or wounded. Their ranks decimated, the remainder of the 6th Infantry falls back to reorganize under their only uninjured officer, Captain Thomas Noel. With the Army in temporary disarray, the emboldened Seminoles venture forth from the cover of the hammock to fire on the remaining soldiers. Rallying his men and the few volunteers that remain on the field, Captain Knoll joins forces with the 4th Infantry, advancing from the east.
There he is. See there. See him now? Which one? The guy in the red. That
What's it called? Memory foam. It was like memory foam. I picked it up. They were big though. They were big.
A letter to your mom. I'll make sure it gets in the next one.
That's not. Yeah, they're about red. No, they are. I only picked got like 10.
wow. Got one guy.
What happened to the medic?
The medic gets down, then your entire army's screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
No,
The one they're like.
Doesn't make me go. Nope, no phones allowed.
Let's go. We got full on thing on your You wouldn't even give them a little dinky camera on an iPhone.
Just silence.
I thought you said no. Well, he's an adult thing. Shut up. No way. Did he? Yeah. I come to say something like you shoot this man. The guy already had good time. Horse is like, what? I don't like it.
Colonel Foster knows that if he leaves his men exposed in the open, they'll be cut down like the volunteers and the men of the 6th Infantry were. There is only one way to force the Seminole to retreat. He orders his men to fix bayonets and calls for a charge.
Stop.
Why am I the only one up here?
Yeah, they all just died.
We ran the other way.
Yeah. All the volunteers stay back. I like how there's Indians right next to them.
The battle has ended. The Seminole warriors have escaped along the shore, and in canoes they have placed along the beach. So who was the winner? To the Army and to the American people who will read about it in the newspapers, the answer is obvious. The United States forces were holding the disputed ground at the end of the day, so they are the victors. Zachary Taylor will become famous. He will be made a general, and as a consequence of his reputation, will be given command in the Mexican War and become a national hero. He'll then be elected President of the United States. But is it that simple? What had the Seminoles hoped to accomplish in this battle? Could they hope to stop the entire United States Army? No, but they could hope to inflict serious casualties and slow the Army's advance. Every day that the Army was delayed was another day for the women, children, and elders to move deeper into the safety of the Everglades. In this, the Seminoles were more than successful. Of the approximately 360 soldiers who advanced against the hammock, about a third of them were casualties. Days would be spent caring for the wounded, burying the dead. The Missouri Volunteers and 6th Infantry were virtually destroyed, with nearly every officer dead or wounded. The 4th Infantry suffered less, but was dispatched back to Tampa to escort and care for the remnants of the other 2 units. Half of Taylor's force was out of action. The Seminoles had escaped, and General Jessup's dream of a quick end to the war would not be realized. The Second Seminole War would drag on for another 4.5 years, bringing no real victory to no one and accomplishing little but the death and suffering of hundreds of people on both sides of the conflict. Years later, there would be a third Seminole War. Yet through it all, the Seminole people have endured and remain. We thank you for coming to the Okeechobee Battlefield Historic State Park and sharing in the memory of this important day and honoring those brave men on both sides who fought and died for the land they love. Please remain in your seats for the salute, which will be followed by a cannon firing demonstration and powwow dancing. Again, we thank you.
Hey, let's hear it for our reenactors! Woo! Yeah! Please remain for the final salute. Okay, let's hear it again. Here they come. Woo! Wow, look at them all. This is great.
Wait a second.
By for the cannon demonstration and the powwow dancing. Have fun, enjoy the rest of your day, and God bless. Purchase your tickets for the raffle drawing over here to the left. Thank you, guys.
And please, let's give a hand to Ms. Shawn Henderson for all the hard work she's done organizing this event. We thank you.
No, the big ride. They'll show you.
No.